Tennessee's got the first of two official visit recruiting weekends coming up to end the month of June. Who all will be on campus this weekend, and where do the Vols stand with some of those guys? We're going to talk recruiting with John Garcia coming up on today's show right after our starter spotlight in Jacob Warren. This is Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and happy Friday. Welcome to Locked On Vols, your first listen each and every day. I am Eric Kane, and I am so glad to have you guys along for the ride hanging out with me here today. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. I'm Eric Kane, your host here of Locked On Vols, @_Kaner on Twitter, @Locked On Vols. I do radio at 99.1 The Sports Animal in Knoxville, and I also write for the rival site that covers the University of Tennessee. That is volquest.com. So we got some fun to get into today. Again, like I said, we'll talk a little starter spotlight. We'll go to the tight ends today, Jacob Warren, a local product. Then we'll welcome in John Garcia of Sports Illustrated to go over a lot of the highly rated prospects Tennessee is in on, who could be coming to decisions here soon, and the kind of this first wave of two big-time official visit recruiting weekends that's coming up here for a Friday show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Starter spotlight, let's go. We've talked wide receiver all week long. We've done Cedric Tillman. We've done Brew McCoy. We've done Jalen Hyatt. Now, Jacob Warren, lunch pail guy, right? That's what I like to call him. He's a lunch pail guy. He has come in, a local product from Farragut High School, and he has done nothing but work. He has worked. And he came in, skinny guy, about 6'4", 6'5". Gosh, I want to say, it probably says 220 on the website. He probably is about 215, 210 potentially. He was a small guy. There's no doubt about it. And he came in, and he is all the way up to about 250 pounds right now at 6'6". He has done a great job putting on weight and getting himself in the best shape possible to take the licks, to take the hits, to be able to do everything he needs to do at the SEC level. And he's come along, right? He came in as a linebacker. He moved the tight end, had a little bit of a role in the 2019 season with Jeremy Pruitt, the 2020 season with Jeremy Pruitt. His role increased last year with Josh Heupel. And, of course, he's been splitting duties with Princeton Fan, especially the last 2 years. So, at the tight end position for Tennessee, really I could be talking Jacob Warren and Princeton Fan right now, but we're going to go ahead and talk Jacob Warren. You could be talking about both of those guys because they split the reps. They do a whole lot of different things. But Jacob Warren, you've seen his production go up. So in 2019, he had 1 reception for 1 yard. In 2020, he had 6 receptions for 73 yards. And in 2021, he had 8 receptions for 179 yards and 3 touchdowns. What Josh Heupel and Alex Golesh love to do is use their tight ends in red zone situations. They like to use their tight ends in short yardage situations. They also like to play, kind of move them around a little bit. They'll line up as an H-back. They'll line up at running back. They'll line up on the line of tight end. They'll split them out wide. You are truly an X factor if you're playing tight end in this Josh Heupel offense. And we saw Jacob Warren do a little bit of all those things last year. Remember the Pitt game? He lined up in the backfield, kind of ran a banana route out there and caught a touchdown. Remember, against Bowling Green, he was primarily playing that H-back. And remember, later in the season, Princeton Fan comes to mind for this one, but, out there in the slot and, kicking a guy out, kicking the corner out, and for that tunnel screen to come in there and, goes for 73 yards and a touchdown at Kentucky. So the tight end position is very, very important for this football team, and Jacob Warren is going to be the 1A to the 1B. That is Jacob Warren and Princeton Fant at tight end. But, can these guys step up and be more of a receiving option? That's what Josh Heupel wants. It doesn't need to only simply be the 3-headed monster wide receiver like it was last year. Jacob Warren needs to take off. He needs to lessen that load, if you will. One of the biggest plays for Jacob Warren in terms of receiving that stands out is how he came up just short of the line to gain against Ole Miss on that 4th and 17, if you will. And, if you just fell one way or the other, if you just, got a better jump, whatever the case may be, I'm not blaming it on Jacob Warren. I'm just saying, the little things can make the difference. And I'm intrigued to see how Jacob Warren kind of comes back here for his 5th year, senior year. And, kind of comes back here and plays a little bit. So no doubt about it. It's one of the leaders on this football team. He's a veteran on this football team. And I think he he and Prince Fant both are going to have to take it upon themselves to educate, train, and get some of these other guys behind them ready to roll, because I do believe that they want to play with multiple tight ends, have multiple guys be ready to go. My biggest question is, and I think your biggest question as well, is can these guys become receiving options, consistent receiving options? Because that's something that Tennessee has not had since, I mean, really, let's think about it, guys. Is it Ethan Wolf? Do we want to give him that? Would it be Michael Rivera? I mean, it's been a minute since Tennessee's had a true true option in the receiving game for a tight end that you felt really, really good about. I might be missing someone just obvious, but remember Dominic Wood-Anderson? We were also excited about seeing him play at Tennessee. He was nothing. He got one touchdown at the Carolina Panthers Stadium in Charlotte against West Virginia to kick off the 2018 season. And that's all she wrote, right? I mean, he didn't do a dang other thing his entire career. So I'm intrigued to see how much further these guys have come along, because a staple in a Josh Heupel offense with Alex Golesh is the tight end play. That's why Alex Golesh, the offensive coordinator, he coaches the tight ends. You know that the tight ends are going to be very much a big part of this offense. It's, can you be more than, can you uptick your, can you increase what you want to do in the red zone? Because if you go back and watch the tape at UCF, those tight ends were used very, very much in the red zone on the goal line. The first orange and white game back in 2021 in the spring, when they did it inside Neyland Stadium, that was, they did it a couple of times as well in goal line situations that threw the tight end. They tried it a couple of times in 2021 season. So can you be used more in that type of situation? And can you just be more of a consistent receiving option? So we will have to see. But that's why I love the tight end position. You're such an X factor. You're so versatile. You are very much there in the run game. You are very much there in the passing game. You can line up pretty much anywhere. So Jacob Warren, who's gotten better and better and just learned how to play the game at this level and done it a really, really good job. I think that the best is yet to come for Jacob Warren, the local product from Farragut High School. So starter spotlight. Not a whole lot to say about the tight end position. That's kind of by design, because we got a lot to get into with John Garcia coming up, but I did want to shine some light on Jacob Warren. On Monday, we will head to running back and talk Jabari Small. John Garcia, Sports Illustrated, coming up here in segments 2 and 3 to talk recruiting for the rest of the show. BetOnline.net, it is your number one source for all your sports stats, sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, the news, the odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, NHL hockey finals, Major League Baseball, and, of course, the latest and fighting news from the MMA and UFC, all the way to boxing. BetOnline.net is your number one continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, reality television, and more. Head on over to the website today. What are you waiting on? Do it right now and use your mobile device to learn about all the latest trends and the action. Hey, live golf, of course, but this weekend's the U.S. Open, and you know that there's going to be plenty of opportunities to talk U.S. Open at BetOnline.net. So don't wait there. You got NASCAR on Sunday as well. BetOnline.net, it is where the game starts. All right, guys, welcome back into a Friday show, and I've got an important favor to ask you. We put together a survey so we can learn more about you, the listeners, and what makes your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us exactly what you like and what you don't like about Locked On Podcasts. So here's what you need to do. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It's not going to take very long at all, and everyone that enters and completes the survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. I really, really do appreciate your help. All right, guys, let's talk a little recruiting. And to do that, we're going to bring on our guy, our insider from Sports Illustrated, John Garcia Jr. John, been a few weeks. Hope you've been well.
Yeah, been well. A lot going on in June. It feels like, the new December in recruiting with all these official visits, and it means decisions are coming too. So a lot to get to as always.
Yeah, it's been very, very busy. I know you've been to Las Vegas. We're going to get to that here in just one moment. But speaking of decisions that are about to be coming to fruition and, decisions being made, Ohio State or Tennessee, Tennessee's number one wide receiver target, Cornell Tate, I believe he'll be making his decision announcement here, maybe, within the next week, maybe 10 days. It could be tomorrow. He's a very secretive guy. I think that he's just going to pop up and do it one random day without, maybe even alerting the coaching staff one way or the other. But Tennessee is certainly in this one. Your thoughts on where Tennessee kind of, if they'll get to the finish line, and if so, what a haul it would be for Cornell Tate?
Well, yeah, independent of where it is right now, if Tennessee wins out, this is as big of an individual recruiting win as there is, and it's another sign of the progress and really the trend of the Vols moving in the right direction on and off the field. Yeah, Cornell, like you said, a lot of things are close to the vest. He kind of admitted, hey, this video's he went back and forth a little bit, like, has it fully been shot or is it just being edited? He wasn't quite sure. So there could be some final touch-ups to be made, but either way, this thing is coming here in the next week or two, like you said, this final decision. And technically, he said it's the final 4 schools he mentioned in May, but we know it's a little bit more narrow than that. It is Ohio State or Tennessee, and it's kind of a classic battle here, right? The school that he grew up wanting to play for, the childhood favorite, Ohio State, which has produced receivers as well as any school in the country, or the school that's been newer to the race, kind of the new trend, certainly since the calendar turned over to 2022. I believe he's been in Knoxville well more than any other program, and including an official visit. And really from that point, it really was a marker that, hey, Tennessee's going to be in this race all the way until the end. So you could kind of create the sell for both of these programs. And then you could also create some real differences between the two, whether it's the stability and consistency of Ohio State at that position or the upward trajectory of Tennessee and the group of commits that are coming in. And to undersell that element, I think would be a little naive in this race when Cornell has told us face to face, hey, I want to play with a great quarterback. And Tennessee's the only school that's got one committed at all in the class of 2023 among these 4 finalists. That's, of course, Nico Iamaleava, who he again reconnected with out in Las Vegas. It seems like, not only do they talk every day, but now they're hanging out every couple weeks, it feels like. So there's no doubt that the bond between those two is pretty strong and kind of grows at a rapid rate. So obviously, I'm sure Nico threw in another reminder or two for when that time comes. So, yeah, you could really sell it either way. It's a little too close to call for me. I get phone calls on this every day. The most recent was positive for Ohio State. The one before that was very positive for Tennessee. It really is, touch and go between these two programs, and it's going to be a fun finish either way.
Yeah, speaking of Nico, of course, he was in Las Vegas, 7-on-7 overtime, along with Tennessee commit Ethan Davis, who I saw you have a lot of nice things to say on Twitter about, saying pretty much every time you see him in person, it's stock up for Ethan Davis. What about those two Tennessee commits? Obviously, Nico had a heck of a weekend there. Picked up MVP awards from one publication, but looked like the Big Orange are represented well by some current commits in Nico and Ethan Davis.
Absolutely. I'll start with Davis real quick. Just, my goodness. Yeah, you see him and you're just like, that's what tight ends are trying to look like. I think at all levels, they want to be 6'4", 6'5", big and physical, but also relatively lean, almost like an overpowering wide receiver. Ethan Davis, he just tracks the ball so easily. It looked easy for him against corners, in terms of creating separation and plucking the ball out of the air. It's just not something that's supposed to happen. But maybe the most impressive thing he did wasn't even during, a game itself. He caught a touchdown and ran into this foam pit that they had out there for celebrations. And he does a full front flip into the foam pit just right after catching a touchdown in 105-degree heat. This kid is as freaky as it gets at the position. You could argue he's the best tight end recruit in this class of 2023, something that, will be challenged and vetted through the rest of the cycle. And then with Nico, man, more of the same, right, Eric? This is the arm just captivates you when you watch him. I've now seen him, I think, 4 times in person, and there's always a throw that you're like, I got to rewind my video and take another look at it. This time, a DB had like perfect coverage, broke on the ball as soon as Nico cocked his shoulders back, and it just didn't matter. The ball just arrived faster than the DB could react. That's the timing and the accuracy and the velocity that Nico can utilize with that right arm. But I think just as impressive as the one play was the full body of work. That's kind of the knock on him, right? Their overall consistency, the long-term consistency. We hadn't seen it as much from him. And over several days, Nico looked like the best quarterback in Las Vegas. And that group was loaded, right? Malachi Nelson was out there. Dante Moore was out there. Jake Rashada was out there. Great 2024 quarterbacks were out there. And I think unanimously, Nico was the most captivating quarterback. And he lifted his teammates higher than they probably should have been, right? All these other teams were much more loaded at wide receiver with FBS and Power 5 prospects, and Nico lifted up his guys higher despite not having the same amount of talent around him. So a lot of qualities you want to see in a quarterback, and that's why for me he's in the discussion for being the number one guy overall.
We got a couple more to get into, but one more here in this segment. Tennessee will have 7 to 8 official visitors, I believe, this weekend. Now they will have literally about 24 the next weekend, but on the last weekend. But one of those is going to be Stanton Ramel, and he's a guy that Tennessee wants. Initially, when you look at this offensive tackle class, he's probably third or fourth down in the pecking order. Things change, of course. Tennessee's still in it for Francis and Lucas Simmons and some of these other guys and everything. But he's a guy, Stanton Ramel, that if he went on his visit, I'm not saying this will happen, but if he went on his visit, he said, "Hey, I want to be here." They take him on the spot. It's a big weekend for Tennessee in regards to Stanton Ramel, who put out his top 8 in Tennessee, Michigan State, Auburn, Mississippi, Penn State, North Carolina, Pitt, Clemson. Only taken a couple of official visits to. Obviously, you can't official visit all 8 of those, but he will Tennessee this weekend. What do you like about Stanton Ramel, and how big, again, of a weekend is this for the Volunteers, who are in it for so many tackles, but they need to get 1 or 2 of them to really help out Nico on the offensive side of this class?
Yeah, and I think that'll be a big selling point if and when the time comes for these guys to make decisions. But yeah, with Ramil, obviously trying to pull a guy out of Birmingham, no easy task, although Tennessee's been able to do that over the years on occasion. And it's an interesting group of schools. He's not your conventional Birmingham kid. He didn't grow up there, all day Roll Tide, War Eagle kind of kid. This is a kid who, his father played at Alabama, but he grew up in upstate New York and then moved down, I believe, a year and a half ago to the Birmingham area to play for Thompson High School. So he's got some Northeast schools in there, as you mentioned, Pitt, Penn State, among them, Michigan State in the Big Ten as well. So it's a diverse and unique top group of schools. But when you get back down into SEC country, I think Tennessee and Auburn have done maybe the best job within that group with this kid. He's taken multiple visits to each. I think this will be visit number 3 to Tennessee, or at least the 3rd this year up to Knoxville. So he's obviously incredibly familiar with Ellerbe and that offensive staff, and he's building, quite a familiar bond with the rest of the recruits that Tennessee's looking at. That's something that you don't typically see this early in the process. And I think that's another, tip of the cap to what Tennessee's built from a volume perspective in this class of 2023. But it does look like he's going to take his time. I think he'll take the rest of his visits and push it into the late summer months, maybe even into the early fall. And I don't think that's a bad thing for Tennessee. I think that's probably more of an indication of an uphill battle for the Penn States, the Pitts, the Michigan States of the world that got him on campus briefly and are now trying to get him back on campus again. Tennessee has already been there, done that with Stanton. So I would imagine within that top 8, Tennessee's probably sitting in the top half, maybe even better at this juncture with the visits still to come. And obviously, official visits, much more time, much more emphasis on what, a kid really is looking for at the next level. And for him, it's the relationships, but also schematics, right? He's a big offensive tackle, 6'7", 305 or so. So I do think that's, schematically, I think he's going to look for a true on-field fit, whether it's left tackle or right tackle, or maybe even inside, depending on some of the sells that he's getting from these schools.
Yeah, was on campus for the Rocky Top-a-Palooza Memorial Day weekend, was on campus to see a spring practice, and we'll be back on campus this weekend for an official visitor. John Garcia, Sports Illustrator, the director of recruiting over there. We're going to have more with him coming up in segment number 3. But guys, with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain or auto parts store to stock up all the parts that you may need. So why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning that comes from the person behind the counter as they wait to look, or as you wait rather, to look for, as they look through their computers for only their parts that their business, their warehouse, that they happen to carry, right? So you have access to a computer, you have access to rockauto.com right in your pocket, and you can save time and money when using rockauto.com. Don't spend up to 30 to 50, sometimes even 100% more for the same parts from your chain store or dealership that you could do it by buying from a family-owned business, serving it to do-it-yourselfers and the professionals online for 20 years. That's rockauto.com, and the Rock Auto prices are always so reliably low for every single customer. It doesn't matter who you are. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution for all of your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car and your truck. Right Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit my friends at rockauto.com. We got a final segment left here on Locked On Vols this week, and we're going to finish strong, talking a little recruiting with our guy, John Garcia Jr. John, we spoke Stanton Ramel. He's one of the two highlights in terms of official visitors this weekend. But the other highlight, if you want to call it that, is going to be Cam Selden. Cam Selden's huge for this class because the running back room or the running back board, rather, as we spoke on, it is literally all over the place. But you bring in Cam Selden, if you're able to get him, he's a guy that can play running back, but he is a man amongst boys. About 220, 6'1", 6'2". He can blaze. It's a track star. He's a versatile type guy. Tennessee needs to come through in a big way this weekend when Cam Selden is on campus for an official visit.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, this is one of the top, uncommitted recruits in the country, regardless of position or position projection, right? Which is kind of all over the place. So I think that's where you begin if you're Tennessee, really sitting down with him. Him being a guy who played like quarterback, running back, receiver, corner, track, everything. Hey, this is what you're going to be here, and this is how we plan on utilizing you. Sometimes it sounds so elementary, but I think hammering that home and re-emphasizing exactly where UT envisions him is something that will inevitably play a big role in this final decision. He's taken several other visits. I think Penn State was the most recent, and I think he's looking for that at each school because that does factor into what you want to do at the next level in terms of your value, comfort, and things like that. But yeah, I do think that they need more offensive weapons in this class beyond, Nico and potentially a Cornell Tate, depending on if he jumps in. You need more volume, and I think that's something that is pretty clear to see. And you got to go outside the region for some of it as well. And I think Selden would be a big get for Tennessee, really, no matter how you look at it or no matter where he projects positionally. So very curious to see where they hit on that mark. And then what his timeline looks like. So, I think a lot of guys are taking these June officials in order to make a summer decision. And if that's the case here, you just wonder if this will be kind of the final impression for UT before a decision is to be made. And if that's the case, again, you got to take advantage of the opportunity. So I think with him, it's probably a good thing that it isn't the 24 official visitor weekend or whatever it's going to be, because now it could be an all hands on deck kind of deal. And given that he's an out of region kid and a multi-position kid, that could typically, lend itself to multiple coaches recruiting him successfully, even on one coaching staff. So curious to see who kind of his guys are on that UT staff as well. Obviously, the relationship has progressed to the point where they're getting an official visit. So I think it'll be big, not only to get it, but to really emphasize those messages while he's on campus.
Another guy at the top of Tennessee's board at their respective positions been Christian Conyer. Tennessee's been in a good spot there for a long time. Tennessee, in my opinion, remains in a good spot for Christian Conyer, the Bowling Green native. It's down to Tennessee and Kentucky. You've seen some predictions go for Tennessee as late as this week, while it's been kind of split 50-50 Tennessee and Kentucky. Looks like he's going to have an early July here in the next few weeks, early July decision coming down. But Christian Conyer, who actually threw out the Vols sign in a picture with a recruiting event with Kentucky, looks like if he were to commit to Tennessee in the next few weeks, would be one of the pillars on the defensive side of the football for Tennessee's class.
Yeah, 100%. This is a true SEC East battle here, like you mentioned, Tennessee versus Kentucky. And he's taking official visits, I believe, the next 2 weekends to each of these programs. So it's pretty cut and dry here. The 17th, you're at UT. The 24th, you're at Kentucky. And then you pop on the 23rd or on the 3rd of July. So it's really not a whole lot of wasted time in between. And he's got great relationships with both of these programs already, right? So this is, to me, about getting those final couple of questions answered. And maybe it's not even for you. Maybe it's your family's final couple questions to get answered just to be 100% sure. But he seems awfully close. He spoke to SI recently and he was just like, when I commit, I'm done. So he's very close to already being locked into one of these two. And I do think that, he's going to follow through with a commitment on the 3rd. Not a lot of drama here. I do think Tennessee has the edge right now. It's not a huge lead in my opinion, but I do think they do have a lead going into these final 2 visits ahead of that July 3rd commitment date. So it could be kind of the beginning of a nice run for the Vols, because I think a lot of kids, as July creeps around, dead period, a lot of just working out or family vacations, a lot of time to think about where you want to play at the next level. And I think a lot of decisions are going to start to trickle in. So I think that'd be a good kind of Kickstarter for the Vols or Kentucky if he ends up there.
Another guy I think Tennessee's in the driver's seat for, who could be making a decision in the next couple of weeks, maybe late June, early July, was just on campus. Linebacker Jalen Smith, Grayson High School. Not the tallest guy, about 6 foot, nearly 6'1", but good size on him, about 220, and was just on an official visit for Tennessee. I think he really had a good time. I think Tennessee did a really nice job there, and I would say Tennessee's a leader for Jalen Smith at this point. Linebackers, or Tennessee needs linebackers, right? C.J. Allen's going to be on campus, of course. Would love to get him, but in my opinion, I don't think that's going to happen. You're in it with Jeremiah Thielander, but of course, a guy like Jalen Smith would help with that if Tennessee's able to lock that one down.
Yeah, another one that's kind of taking that trendy plan, right? A bunch of June officials make the decision thereafter. And yeah, I think the positioning for UT is strong coming off of that visit, I should say. So you just got to withstand a couple more trips before he's done. I believe 4 official visits are to be taken. Curious to see if he gets out to Texas. I do think that's one of those programs that can kind of throw a wrench into things, right? The branding, the prestige, just kind of the history there, I do think is quite captivating. But if you get back to regional stuff, I mean, this is an Atlanta area kid, Grayson High School, we all know, great powerhouse program in the northern part of the state that has been good to Tennessee in the past. I do think all of that regional familiarity will certainly help the Vols there in the end. But I'm curious about Texas. It doesn't feel like there's a clear secondary threat to the Vols at this moment. I know he's taken the Pitt official as well. He took an official to Virginia, and a couple others are in the mix. But I'm curious about this weekend at Texas, if he goes, how that goes, and then to see if that's the true contender to stack up with Tennessee. Otherwise, like you said, Eric, if he's still on track to make a June or July commitment, you got to like where the Vols stand for the Grayson standout as well. And it's a nice fit, I think. He's a modern linebacker, like you said, not the biggest in the world, but comfortable in space. He mans the middle for Grayson High School. So, football IQ wise, it's not going to be a zero there. That there's going to be a whole lot of responsibility with that position at that kind of school. So those are the kind of guys you need on the roster. They're not the biggest headliners like Nico or Cornell Tate, but they're certainly necessary to build strong defenses with. And we know that's the side of the ball that Vols fans should be more, I guess, plugged in on from a recruiting standpoint, because we do think this offense, we kind of give it the benefit of the doubt. This offense is going to be good for kind of a while, we think. So I think there's a little bit more pressure on that defensive staff to reel in recruits that can match some of that energy.
As wild as this sounds, I mean, the defensive commits might be better than the offense. I mean, the defensive side of the football might bring in a better haul overall than the offensive side of the football when it's all said and done. Again, that's kind of a hot take when you have Nico, you're in it for Cornell Tate, Francis will come back for an OV. I understand all that. But if you can get a couple of collection of these defensive linemen that you're in right now, these edge guys, Tennessee, and you add Connor to the mix, maybe a John Slaughter later on. I mean, Tennessee could be doing some things on defense as well. But, of course, that all remains to be seen. Last one I do want to ask you about. A running back from Bishop Gorman High School was at Tennessee's camp. I believe it was June 1st when he was out there. Will Stallings. He's about 6'1", 220. I watched him camp, a little stiff, but a good-looking kid, really built, well built and put together. He ran about a 4.6. He's a guy that I wasn't blown away with watching him in camp. But, again, I think that there's a lot you can work with there, and Tennessee is interested in a guy like Will Stallings, and I think that he's kind of he's picked up some momentum to potentially make it in this class. Another name Tennessee's kind of looking and evaluating at the running back position that, again, is just kind of all over the place.
Yeah, well, he's a guy who profiles like an SEC back, and I think Tennessee was his first SEC offer. So, so it's not only optically, in line and makes sense, but the kid went out and camped for it, and I think that's really the X factor. And it wasn't an official visit, so naturally you could potentially get him back on campus one more time and kind of be the outlier in this recruitment. Right now, it appears elsewhere very Pac-12 heavy, even though does he really fit that? Like you said, big 6'1", 220, 225 or so. Does he fit a lot of those styles beyond a Stanford or maybe a Utah? We're not so sure. And it's interesting because Tennessee's gone outside of the footprint a little bit to find its next running back. They were in it for Roderick Robinson, who committed to UCLA, and he was similar, right? Size-wise, big, physical, downhill type of running back that the Vols really wanted to bring in this class before he got red hot on the trail and ended up staying closer to that Pac-12 footprint. So with Simpkins, you wonder if he's kind of the same vision that they may have had for Robinson. And again, a kid who grew up watching some SEC ball and naturally fits that style a little bit more than the schools closer to home. So I think for Tennessee, the ball could be in their court, right? I do think if they begin to push, it could be something that happens sooner rather than later when it comes to a verbal commitment. But they could be evaluating other backs as well and kind of surveying things. So maybe Simpkins is a guy you slow play a little bit and hope for an official visit, maybe during the season where he could watch Tennessee in action, for a home game against a marquee opponent. So I think it's an interesting play from Tennessee's perspective. We always talk about the recruits. Hey, what is he thinking? When is he going to decide on all that? I think this one could be the other way around, where it's more in Tennessee's court in terms of initiating any kind of movement beyond the scholarship offer that they obviously just handed his way.
At John Garcia _ Jr. There you go on Twitter. Director of recruiting for Sports Illustrated, does an awesome job. What do you have coming up here? Some projects, some articles you're putting out here the rest of the week?
A lot of quarterback talk as always, it seems like. Jaden Rashada's pushing his decision back. Arch Manning's still out there. And we're talking, who's the best? We talk recruiting so much, but my mailbag today was actually who's the best quarterback right now? And I think you could make that argument for Nico. And I'll give you a hint, Vols fans. That's where I kind of landed on it this morning. So certainly check that out. It's going to be a fun debate all the way until the end of the cycle. So we're chasing quarterback news all day at SI ahead of the Elite 11, where, of course, we'll see Nico spin it one more time against all these other great arms. So we'll see if he can continue that hot streak.
John, appreciate it, man. We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good, Eric. Take care.
Man, that's John Garcia Jr. Does awesome work for Sports Illustrated and our insider for the Locked On Podcast Network. Love having him on here at Locked On Vols. That's all the time we have for today, and that's all the time we have for this week. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us here today and each and every day, making Locked On Vols your first listen. And now the first picks of the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft, they've been made. So I need you to search now for the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and get over 50 insiders, the Odyssey Sports experts, the draft experts of Locked On NBA Big Board, everything they have to say. It's the 5-episode Ultimate NBA Mock Draft that's underway, and make the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen right behind Locked On Vols, which of course is your first listen each and every day. A big shout out to all my guests this week. I had a couple of really good guests and some great conversation with you guys. We'll come back stronger than ever on a Monday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay safe, everybody.